Good morning. We're going to give folks one more minute to jump on. Looks like we have about 20 participants in the call so far. Oh, and it looks like we're jumping up now. So it looks like we've got some folks joining now. Perfect. All right. Fantastic. Well, good morning and welcome to the first session of our Cause Camp Solution camp on workforce development. This call will be recorded and will be made available after the session. Please post your questions in the chat. We have a couple of folks who are monitoring the chat box this morning. Our agenda this morning is going to include some brief Salesforce product overviews, an introduction to Provisio partners, a technical demo, and a bit about the Institute for Career Development. And we will be closing out our session this morning with an Ask Me Anything session with a trailblazer. As a reminder, this session is a part of our summer camp enablement and includes 2 additional sessions in August, one on housing, shelter, and bed management, and a second on early child care. Salesforce is a publicly traded company, and customers should make buying decisions only on the products commercially available today. I want to start by thanking all of you for taking the time to connect with us this morning and for all of the important work that you do to support your mission, your constituents, and your staff. I'm truly inspired by your resiliency and the work that your organizations do every day. I'm Steph. I'm an account executive here at Salesforce.org. I work exclusively with nonprofit organizations. Before joining Salesforce, I worked at New Jersey's largest YMCA in programming and fundraising. Today, we're joined by Valerie Rogers. She's the Senior Solution Engineer at Provisio, and her professional background includes over 15 years of working in affordable housing and economic development. I also have the honor of introducing a true trailblazer. Dio Gika is the President of Programs and Operations at the Institute of Career Development, and we can't wait to hear about his work and organization later in this presentation. In talking with our customers, they've shared how the past couple of years have accelerated challenges nonprofits were facing prior to the pandemic. Just take a look at these numbers. The way we work has forever changed. Delivering programs and services to clients has required an adjustment. A majority of our customers have changed their size due to the demand of services and delivering programs. They're also finding it difficult to manage growing caseloads while maintaining speed and quality. And nonprofit staffing shortages have affected human service organizations everywhere. Client expectations are also changing. The client experience is just as important as the services that you're providing. Workforce development, job reentry, and career readiness programs are meeting the critical needs of individuals across the country. Even the White House recognizes the value of the work that you do. They recently announced committing over $40 billion towards the American Recovery Plan investments in our workforce, with more dollars coming. The work your organizations do is critical and has a true ripple effect of building strong families and vibrant communities. So how can Salesforce help? Whether you're new to Salesforce or an old friend, let's start with introducing Salesforce for nonprofits. Salesforce.org takes advantage of the core Salesforce platform features to create nonprofit-specific solutions across fundraising, marketing and engagement, program management, grant making, and also drives internal organizational excellence. Salesforce Nonprofit helps you gain a holistic view of your clients to determine the best way to deliver whole person care with the stakeholder 360. It provides you with real-time program insights that you need to share your impact with funding agencies. And when things change, They always do. You'll be able to adapt if you have flexible, integrated systems in place to take advantage of them. So let's look at how human service nonprofits like yours are using the Stakeholder 360 to build meaningful relationships with their clients. Salesforce for nonprofits allows you to unite all of your data sources in one place and the ability to integrate with thousands of tools. This solution is going to help you bring together data from multiple sources and make evidence-driven decisions. You're going to collaborate with and empower your clients to reach their goals. And you're going to build trust and confidence by understanding the needs of each individual. You're also going to shape and improve your program impact, guided by real-time data. Nonprofit cloud case management, which is what we're here to talk about today, helps case managers manage the entire client lifecycle in a single system. You may be doing this using spreadsheets or paper, or a tool that doesn't necessarily help you guide your clients moving forward to achieving their goals. With nonprofit cloud case management, you're able to track your services, your case plans, notes, incidents, assessments, and outcomes in a single system that is accessible from anywhere. So you don't need to be in the office to make changes or to know the whole story of any one individual that you're working with. Valerie's going to introduce how Provisio is using their industry expertise to support a seamless digital transformation for your organization.
Thank you for the great introduction, Steph. I am our senior solutions engineer here at Provisio. We are a Salesforce implementation partner who exclusively works with human service organizations. So we're working with nonprofits like yours every day. We do have a team of about 70 experts that we work with. Many of them, just like me, come from a nonprofit background. A lot of the work that we do is in mental and behavioral health, housing and homelessness, workforce development, as well as early childhood. And we are currently serving over 160 clients. We are a Salesforce Crest partner, so we do work with a lot of nonprofits like yourself. We do provide a lot of services at Provisio. One of the main ones we do is custom implementations. So people like myself as a senior solutions engineer, I help come up with scopes of work as we're working with our clients to make sure that we're meeting your needs as we build out the functionality. We also do data and analytics and systems integrations. So if there's outside systems you need to pull into Salesforce, we can do that as well. And then one of the things we'll be focusing on today is one of our cause solutions. So we've built out, based on our experience, a couple cause solutions that get you up and running a lot quicker, as we've dealt with similar use cases across many of our clients as well. And then fourthly, we also work in managed services. We know to make our clients successful, often you need someone as a backup to help with administrative tasks or building new functionality. So that's another service that we also provide. We do work with a lot of different kinds of nonprofits. Some of them are seen here. We work in health and support, employment and job training, which we'll be talking about today. We work with many housing and shelter programs, as well as other groups that do early childhood, developmental disabilities, and also immigrant and immigration services as well. So now we're going to go on to our demo portion. I'm going to be walking through the nonprofit case management app that Steph had talked about a little bit before. And we're really going to show the life cycle of serving one of the clients as they come through a workforce development program. And Steph, you might need to unshare your screen so I can share mine. Perfect. So as you can all see, I am logged into our case management app for Salesforce. This app comes with a lot of really great functionality out of the box. We as implementation partners can also come in and customize it based on your needs. But as you can see, I am logged in and I'm on my homepage. I can see a lot of great pertinent information for the work I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. I can see any events I have coming up today. I can see that I've got a meeting with Gloria at 10 today. I can also see any open tasks that I might have that I need to meet with a caseworker and a job coach for one of my clients. So I can see both those tasks that are overdue and tasks that are due today directly on my homepage, which is really great as well, because I can see a lot of the things I might need to work on today. And then also we can surface up dashboards on homepages as well. So as you're thinking of ways to allow your staff to be able to see those things that are really critical directly from their homepage, they can do that with Salesforce, and that's something that we can set up as well. Another great feature of the case management app is this client search. So as we're working with clients, being able to just search for those people really quickly and seeing their information. So with the client search, you're able to search by first name, last name, client ID, if you've got those great external client IDs that you might need for specific funder requirements. And then you can also search by birthday. The client search is also really great because you might be using Salesforce as well as your larger Rolodex of the different businesses and business contacts that you're working with. So this client search allows you to just drill down specifically on clients and find them very quickly. If I click on Gloria's contact, we can see a lot of her great contact information here. You're able to upload photos. You can see here we can track her name, her legal name, birth date, address, a lot of great information on her as well as basic details of Gloria, so that as we're working with our clients, we can see their client ID, their age, those demographics that we know we always need to report to funders, and then also seeing important information like phone, email, address, and then if you're working with clients that have emergency contacts, being able to track that as well. So that's all on that details page of Salesforce for that client, but we can also see related important information on that client as well. So if we click on our related tab, we can see any relationships Gloria might have. We can see that she does have a caseworker, which is Joe, that we're working with as well as we have this person coming through our workforce development program. And we can also see that there's an inbound referral that came in because Gloria is looking to find more stable employment. So we'll dig into that inbound referral in a minute, but you can also see on our contact page that if Gloria is in other programs within your agency, you can track those here. We can also track assessments, case plans, any of those services that we're providing, as well as client notes. So let's dig in and look at that inbound referral to see how we can help Gloria. So I do have this case that came in. We can click on it here. We can see that she's interested in finding stable employment because maybe she's had an on and off job and she's really just looking to get better and more stable employment. We're also able to track where those referrals came in from. We've got a great partnership with this organization with Pathways Church, and they did provide us more information from her caseworker that she's working with at the church and that she's interested in our employment services program. So here we can also track the different stages of how we're working with those referrals as well, so that we know that we're working on this one as we get her ready to potentially join our program. So let's create an intake for her as well, so that we can see what additional information we might need to collect as we're determining if she's a great fit for our program. So this is another great feature of the Salesforce case management system. We call it NCCM. You can see that we can track where she is in that intake process. We'll say that she's in progress right now as we're starting to collect information. We can also see that inbound referral that came in as part of that intake, so we can track any additional information regarding that referral. These pages are also updatable as well and can be tailored to your program's needs or the intake questions that you ask. We can also see here that if we need to, we can track income details because Gloria is coming in with part-time employment and really wants to focus on making sure that she can increase her income over time. We can also see too from this intake layout that we can track basic information, including demographics, and all of this stuff will then get automatically connected to her contact layout. And then if there's any assessments we want to do as part of the intake, those can be tracked here as well. One of my other favorite features of the nonprofit case management application is you can see here too that we can have intake checklists. So as we're working with our client here, and let me see if I can find one that's got employment, we can create a checklist for staff so that as you're working with your clients, being able to collect that information that you might need to as part of that intake. So here we can make sure and confirm that we got her address and her emergency contacts. We can collect all of that historic work information so we could send a verification of employment if we need to, and then we can also determine if we need to refer her out or if we're going to enroll her in our program. So these intake checklists are really great too, because these will actually surface on your staff members' homepages as well as a reminder of those different things that they might have to collect as part of that intake process. Let's say Gloria is a great fit for our program and we want to be able to enroll her. So directly from this intake, we can create a new program enrollment. This will pop open a box. We can search for our employment services. As you can see, we can create lots of different programs in here very easily. We can track that she's one of our clients, that she is active in our program, and that she is starting. We're going to pretend that she started at the beginning of July. So we're going to backdate her a little bit. So now that she's enrolled in our program, I do want to show you some of those features of the nonprofit case management that will also be really helpful as we're thinking of this cause area too, because we're really leveraging what's already built into Salesforce and then making some additional adjustments based on what we've seen from other clients to make sure that as you're tracking all that work that you're successful in doing that. So let's go to Gloria's program engagement. You can see from the program engagement, we can see everything in the life cycle of serving that client. We can track any notes that we're working on with her, any employment placements as she's coming through the program, any goals and case plans she's working on, any service deliveries that we've done, and even stories. So if there's a great success story at the end of this that's more not data driven, but more of the, the great story you want to be able to tell about success, you can also track those stories as well. So I'm going to go in and create a case plan for our clients so that we can track some of the things that she's working on as she's trying to gain better employment. So we're going to create a case plan for Gloria. We can easily search for her here. You can see those recent contacts will show up first. And then also when looking at these case plans, it is going to look at each of those programs that that person's already enrolled in. So as we did just enroll Gloria, we can see that we can select that employment service. And then Salesforce has the great ability to do case plan templates. So as you're working with clients across the board and you're seeing similar threads of things that you're working on with clients, we can set up those templates. So we can see with employment services that maybe we want to work on a mock interview as one of our goals, create a resume, and also obtain a GED. And then tied to each of those goals, we can also track action items. So for our mock interview, we want to track that we did a mock interview, tracking that feedback, and also scheduling a practice interview. And then with our GED, making sure that we attend and pass that GED test. We can then review anything that we had in that case plan before we're ready to create it, and then easily create that case plan. I really like this functionality because it allows you to create case plans really quickly with templates, but we can also come in here and adjust things as needed as well. So case plans will allow you to track all those different goals and action steps you're working on with your clients, so that as you're working through things, being able to see those different goals with those action steps tied to them, even assigning them to those clients, so that as you're working to get this person ready for better employment or more stable employment, tracking those different goals and action steps. In addition to tracking case plans, the nonprofit case management application also has the ability to track classes as well. So we can have a class called interview skills here. You can see that we've got those sessions. This happens once a week on Monday, so that as we're tracking different attendance, we can click into those classes, so that as you're working with those clients on things like interview skills or resume skills, being easily able to see who's coming into your class, who's tracking, who's coming in for attendance, and then who's meeting those goals so that you can get them placed into a job. So you can see here, we can track this at any different cadence as well. This class, we're tracking it in 6-minute increments, but you could track it in hours. And you can see that we can track attendance for all of these people really quickly as well. This then, if I refresh my screen, creates a service delivery for everybody. So service deliveries are great in the nonprofit case management app because it does allow you to track things similarly across the board, so that as you're doing those impact metrics at the end of the year, being able to count things in a very specific way that can be used across the whole organization. So for example, here we're talking about interview skills and we're tracking that by minutes, but you could also track laptops that you're giving out as a service delivery, or even backpacks or business clothes as well, as you're getting people ready for employment. So those are some of the features that come with the nonprofit case management app that I like to use as I'm, working to make sure that we get people stable employment. But we've also built a cause area solution to make sure that as you're working in workforce development, that you can track those job orders, any referrals you're doing out for jobs, as well as employment placements and retention checks. So with Gloria, we do want to look at one of our job orders. So Gloria is really interested in becoming a store manager. She's previously worked in retail, but she really wants to move to a management level. So you can see here we can track job orders. So as we're working with outside partners to help fill jobs, you can see that we are tracking this and working with the Walgreens on Elm Street. I can hover over really quickly and be able to see any additional information on that account if I need to. We can track that contact at that account as well. So as you're working with your partners and filling jobs, you can track that as well. And then we can track that job title for that assistant program manager, store manager at Walgreens, and how many positions we have available. This object and the functionality we're going to show in the next couple of minutes is stuff that we've built out as our cause area solution, because we often see organizations are tracking things very similarly. We can make adjustments to this for specific organizations because we know that people do things similarly, but they often do things slightly differently. I know that Dio will probably talk to that a little bit later as well, because his organization specifically does track a lot of this too, but they also track working with clients based on certain authorizations. So let's see, with this job order, I want to refer our client out for that job. We can see here that we can see related information. We did do a referral for Claire Dunphy a couple weeks ago, but we also want to refer Gloria out for this job. So I'm going to create a referral for Gloria. We can see, since we created it from that job order, that it's automatically going to pick that store manager job order. We could track an interview date. Let's say that she came in last Friday or 2 Fridays ago to be able to interview for that job. We can tie this specifically to Gloria, track any results. So we could say, she was interviewed and not hired, or she was hired. We can also track if she came out for a job here, but also accepted a different job. So really tracking all of the statuses of that job order referral. So that is, when you're working with partners, you're able to track the status of where the people you're referring out are in that process, and also really managing those relationships. We can also take notes in here, track if there's on the job training or if there's any external training as well. So Gloria did fantastic in her interview. They'd love to hire her. She seems like she's the perfect fit. So we can click on that job order referral directly from here, and also be able to create an employment placement. So as we're working with her, we can click on our employment placement. You can see that that was automatically created. So we can auto create certain records based on if somebody said that they're hired, it's automatically going to create a placement. And then we can come in here and edit some of that additional information. So we know that she did that interview on the 8th. We can say that she did so fantastic. She was placed on the 11th, and that she has her start date coming up on that 22nd. So that we know that she started about a week ago, so that as we're thinking about those different retention checks we need to do, we know what cadence that we need to follow up to track those different dates of when she might be up for a retention check. We can also tie this placement also to a program engagement, and then also that specific employer. This is really one of the pages that we often see organizations changing a little bit, because you might need to be able to track specific job details, like if someone's making above minimum wage, or if you have a living wage, we can also add a calculation based on living wage, so that as you're reporting all this information to your funders, you're able to get those metrics out that you need. So we can take track here on our employment status that she has started. We can track the job duration. So is it permanent or temporary? She did such a fantastic job on her interview. This is a permanent job. And then we can also track those different retention periods. So if you are a workforce development agency that has to track different retention based on different milestones, we can also update these milestones based on what you need. We know some agencies like DOs get paid an additional amount if someone stays for a certain amount of time. So being able to track this retention is really important. We can also track any job details too. We want to mention that this one is full-time. She's working 40 hours a week. She did fantastic. So she's getting $20 an hour, and that's her hourly wage. You can also track any additional information. So if she is terminated at a specific point in time, you can track when that person leaves the job as well. So when we click save here on our employment placement, you can see that since we are tracking her retention, you can see that we have those different retention times on our upper bar here, so we can see those times that we need to follow up with her. You can see that it's also auto-calculated the days that she's already been employed. So as we're thinking about hitting that 65-day marker, making sure that we're tracking those days of employment so that if we are getting paid an additional amount for that longer retention, being able to track that. And since we did put in a start date, you can see that we already had a retention check that's auto-created. So as you're thinking about a reminder for staff on when those retentions need to happen, you can see that they're auto-created here. If we click on that retention check, you can see that we've got that due date. So this is a great way to remind staff that you need to follow up with this person. It's also important to note as we think about those retention checks that you could create what's called a list view on your homepage, where you could surface up to staff exactly who you need to follow up with on a retention check on a weekly basis, so that you can follow up with those clients and make sure you're collecting that retention information. So we're going to pretend that we're 30 days out with Gloria and we're doing that retention check. So we can come in here and say that she's still employed, but we can also track any additional information too, so that if she isn't still employed, we can track the reasoning behind that. We can say that we are doing this a month from now, so we're actually hitting that date. We can track the wage rate. She did fantastic her first month, so let's say that she actually got a $3 raise, which is incredible. So she's doing great work, she has more stable work, and she's able to really increase the income that she has, which is great because this is one of her main goals coming into our program. We can also track how we contacted, if we contacted the employer and how. We know sometimes with retention checks, you're just working with the client. You're also able, sometimes when we customize this, we also customize this if you're sending a verification of employment out to be able to see when you sent that and when you got that back in. So here we can track that this one is closed because we did collect all that information and tracking that retention. If we go back to our original employment placement too, you can see now that we've created that retention check, it's now open the next one for the 60 days. So as we're working through those employment placements and tracking those retention checks, we're able to do that with ease. And it also is automatically creating these records. So it really prompts your staff on when they need to be able to track all of that information. The one last thing I wanted to talk about that we've built out for workforce development that I find really important is we find often with organizations that as you're thinking about employment placement, though you might have placed someone in a job and they end up being there for 60 days, sometimes you can get credit for prior placements as well. So as you're helping keep that person employed for 365 days, even if it's across multiple jobs, you can also track those prior employments here so that it is going to really change that days employed to include that prior placement so that you can get credit for those prior placements as well. Those are some of the main features of our workforce development program. I am going to stop sharing my screen and pass it on to Dio, who is one of our fantastic partners who I've luckily had the pleasure to work with. And he can talk a little bit more about his experience as well.
Oh, okay. So this is Dio. Steph or Maddie, can I show my video, or I can just go without video feed?
And Steph, you're on mute.
Dio, if you want to turn on your video, that's fine. Whatever you feel most comfortable with.
Okay, it says it won't let me show my video, but I can go without.
Okay.
All right, so I'll get started. So hello everyone, my name is Dio Jika, and I'm the President of Programs and Services for ICD, the Institute for Career Development. So I'll talk a little bit about what is ICD, so you get a little bit of context of our Salesforce experience within our small nonprofit. Especially after COVID, we've struck down even more so. But just to make a comment, so Val, that was great. Good to hear from you. As you can tell, Val is a great trainer. She actually trained all of our staff. And I remember that moment, and she's fabulous. I just wanted to give a shout out to you, Val. So ICD is, oh yes, ICD is an organization that serves people with disabilities. Our mission is really to help people with disabilities transform their lives through career development and employment. So as you can see, we sort of align ourselves to the cost solutions that was talked about before. We're in workforce development as well as in disability. So we straddle those communities, and we're actually been around for a long time. We're the best unknown nonprofit in New York City. We were founded in 1917 to really help wounded World War I veterans. We were originally a division of the Red Cross, and we offshooted in 1917 as our own separate organization. You can see here that unlike many other disability organizations where they may only serve the developmental disabilities, the blind or the deaf, we are across the disability organization. And this is, for the most part, the breakdown of the different kinds of disabilities that we serve. 20% physical disabilities, but most of them are what we would consider invisible disabilities, like intellectual and learning disabilities and mental health. So that kind of helps define or a profile of our organization. And this is we serve on a normal year. That's why I'm citing 2019, before COVID. We serve about 1,200 to 1,500, so on average about 1,350 in that year. And about 48% of the people that we serve are considered youth, the young people. And as you can see, we actually recently started a new program, just to make a quick note of that, because we are focusing on young people with disabilities. And so we've actually, starting in the fall, we've embedded ourselves into 2 high schools, really helping to transition those young people with IEPs into the world after they graduate from high school, when of course the IEP is no longer applicable based on the IDEA law. We do, in addition to youth transition services, we do evaluations, what we call DVEs, or diagnostic vocational evaluations. We are also a licensed school through New York State Education Department, and so all of our career trainings are certification based. And of course, we do workforce development, career readiness, and job placement as well. So I just wanted to sort of itemize those things, because that will determine the kinds of components that Val just showed you that are in our database. And I'd like to make a note as well that we launched officially our baseline, I would say, program database in August of 2021. So we've only been really almost just a year, although we spent the last 2 years essentially in development during the COVID lockdown. Next slide, please. Oh, okay. So that's sort of what we did. And just to give you an idea as well, as you can tell, because we're a very old organization, and we are actually funded by Access VR, the government agency that funds people with disabilities. And they're a very old organization. Everything that we had prior to our Salesforce development and launch was paper-based, and that's how our funder referred clients to us. And we are a grantee, but we're unlike many other grantees where you get all the money up front. We are reimbursement process. So we have to deliver the service and develop capacity and train staff and do all of the stuff that you need to do. And we actually don't fully realize our revenue until we've delivered the services and we have the documentation that's required, and then we bill and we get reimbursed that way. So as you can imagine, our billing process is also very meticulous and very complicated. And so that's why we moved into Salesforce to really make that process much more seamless. And so, before, when we talked about our caseload and how many people got a job, we would have to go through each individual hard copy file to look at that information. And then we did some double data entry because we didn't have a database other than an Excel spreadsheet. And then we moved into Microsoft Access, but it was so very, very difficult to know who we served and what was their ultimate outcome. And that really was the impetus why we moved into our baseline program database with Salesforce that we worked with Val closely with. And then after that, we have the same similarities as Val sort of demonstrated to you, but we went through our sort of our second phase, which and what we did there was really, we automated everything. So you don't have to click on this tab versus one tab. You could see relevant information into one page. And so we linked them all up. And this was also important in our billing process. So that was our sort of experience and our process. I wouldn't say it was an easy process, because I would like to also note that we actually worked with a different technology partner. And I put the blame on me because we should have done more of our due diligence. But because of that experience, and that's why we're very appreciative in working with Provisio, because we only realized what we didn't have after we spoke with Provisio based on their cost solutions, because many tech development companies may know the workforce development field, but they don't typically have the disability part. And we really need to have both. And so it was really a perfect partnership and a perfect alignment when we started to work with Provisio and helping us fully realize what we wanted to see, which is, really to mimic what we do as hard copy and better, to be able to do the work that we needed to do, especially because we need to keep the lights on to be able to bill for them appropriately and fully realize those revenues. So I'll sort of stop there. If you have any questions about our experience and what we did.
So folks, if you want to put your questions in the chat, Maddie and I are able to see them right now.
I know we did get one really fantastic first question, which is, are the intake checklist items all manually checked off, or can they be automated? One of the great things with Salesforce is you can automate a lot of different things too. So when we work with agencies, we would talk about what are those things that are taking your staff a lot of time, and making sure that we can automate things that need to be automated, or just making sure that staff is properly trained on some of those new functionalities that might just still be manual, but making sure that staff is comfortable and ready to use them.
Dio, it's Steph. I'd love to hear about your clients and if they could feel a difference, whether it be something specific that changed for them after you started using Salesforce, or if there was something about the way that they were able to more deeply connect to your staff around supporting kind of the full process. Essentially, did your clients feel the difference?
Yes, and that's a great question. The staff definitely felt it, but I think subsequently the clients also felt it. And here's the reason why. In the bulk rehab world, and because of our funding stream, everything is separated by service code. So, the funder wants us to do an intake and an assessment and then make recommendations to them, and then they'll refer back. And that's a different service code. And so one person may have a total of 7 to 10 different service codes by the time that they've come to us for services. And before, when everything was a hard copy file, some service code may be done by one department, and another set of service codes may be done by a second department. And then, the last few service codes may be done by a third department. So as you can imagine, everything is sort of departmentalized, isolated, and it was very difficult from one department staff to talk to the next department because you'd have to go through each caseload. And so that was a process. So, let's say the counselor didn't know what happened to that client when they went through job placement services, or the instructors in the career training department didn't know what happened before, right? So it's very difficult, and we had to do everything to get around the table and discuss it, and it didn't happen in real time. So as you can imagine, when a client comes to us and they're like, well, I got my evaluation and the counselor said I should do this. And then the teacher would be like, I don't know anything about that. I'll have to talk to the counselor, right? To really go back to that. And it was a process, because that may mean another visit. And a lot of people with disabilities have challenges with travel. They're not able to travel as easily because of various limitations. And so that would mean for the client, another visit where the teacher would go back to the counselor to get the information and schedule another one. Now what's happening is that anybody can go through that client profile. And as you saw with what Val demonstrated to you in the program engagement client, you can see all the various services. So if a client would come to us and they're like, my counselor in the evaluation said this, and how come I'm not learning this in the classroom? The teacher will just go into Salesforce, can look there and see all the different service codes and different types of service, and could see the evaluation a client knows. So that may happen, the teacher may say, give me a moment, I'm going to look at the database real quick, and can get a full download of everything that client has ever done. And that means we're able to treat clients more holistically and not departmentalized of the services, because the clients, they don't care how departments are run. They only care about the service that they're getting, and they assume that we all talk to each other and we're all abreast of that client's particular situation. And now we can actually live that dream, because we've always talked about that buzzword of serving our clients holistically. It was very difficult to do it before, and now we can actually walk that walk. And that's really not only a great change for us, but I think a better change for the client, because they're getting a better service from us.
Dio, thank you. That's really helpful. We have a couple questions coming in. The first, I'm going to send one to you, Dio, that's similar, in line with what we were just kind of talking about. So John has a question about if you can migrate data from your regular Salesforce to nonprofit to workforce development easily. Dio, did you start with the workforce development package, or were you working in a different Salesforce capacity and then migrated it over? And if you didn't do that migration, maybe this is a question for Val around what that might look like for a migration from a typical Salesforce CRM. It sounds like that's what John's talking about, to the MPSP and workforce development.
Yeah, so the answer would be the latter. So we didn't do it in increments. We kind of did the whole shebang all at once. And when we were developing, we only brought on the program management system, but we realized that we not only needed that, so we incorporated the case management system. So it's all worked together seamlessly, but we did it all at once. I wouldn't say that I would recommend that. But in terms of the data management, the previous, if you can call it a database that we worked before, as I mentioned, was Microsoft Access, which is really a billing function kind of software. It didn't capture any of the outcomes and any of the program activities, only as it relates to for us to be able to bill. So we did data migrate all of that. It wasn't a perfect match for everything, but we got baseline information and we built off of that. But yeah, I couldn't speak to the other part because we did it all at once.
Yeah, and I can speak to that as well, John. We do work with a lot of agencies as an implementation partner. The nonprofit case management application is newer as of a couple of years ago. We do work with a lot of agencies that might have built on top of Salesforce to track their programs before. The nonprofit case management functionality is fantastic. It's got a lot of really great out-of-the-box functionality. So with organizations that might have an older system, within Salesforce, where they kind of want to move to that case management app, because Salesforce is putting a lot of resources into it, and also a lot of build and a lot of functionality that's great for case managers. We've worked with organizations to migrate what they might have had in Salesforce before to the case management app. If you're already using Salesforce as well, we have configured that employment placements as well on top of existing Salesforce. So there are a couple options there. I think it works really beautifully with the case management app because it is building kind of on top of what's already there. So you do have some options there. And if you do decide, if you are already working in your regular Salesforce for your programs, if you want to migrate that information to workforce development, that's something we can also help with as part of an implementation as well.
Val, can I add to that? I will say that in addition to Salesforce now, we brought on a cloud-based phone system and an app called Virtual Job Shadow, which is basically an online job exploration application. So all the videos and it also does career interest and career aptitude assessments. And what we've done is that we are in the process of building plugins or manual data migration and upload like on a weekly basis, so that everything that is done in those different applications and phone systems. So for example, if a client calls us and they get to the voicemail, our phone system is able to transcribe that voicemail message from the client. And because of our plugin to Salesforce, that is captured as a client note in Salesforce automatically. So we can capture that information without doing any double data entry. So that's our plan to do a plugin on that. And similarly with the Virtual Job Shadow, which is a workforce development application, there is a plugin to that. We have some issues with the network firewall to that, but basically the same thing. Whatever they do on that online platform around job exploration and assessment will automatically be captured in Salesforce. So we don't have to do any double data entry. And because our idea is that one point of entry for everything in terms of the data, so we can see everything all at once, even if they're done in other places.
Fantastic. Thank you. Along the same lines for Val, is everything we saw today delivered functionality? This is a question from Michelle. Michelle,
that's a fantastic question, because as you're looking at databases and maybe you're newer to Salesforce or you're already on the case management app, everything we showed today for the most part comes with that nonprofit case management system out of the box. Where we have tailored that is that cause area solution with workforce development. Those 4 objects I showed today, and we talk about objects, we're kind of talking about like tables on a spreadsheet. So the job orders, job order referrals, retention checks, and employment placements, those are objects that we've kind of bundled together and we can drop into your organization really quickly, so that instead of starting from square one on where you might need to be for workforce development, we can drop that in and adjust it pretty easily. So a lot of the functionality we saw today that is out of the box with that case management app includes tracking those contacts, seeing that fantastic homepage, also tracking those referrals and intakes, tracking those program engagements, those case plans, the class attendance. That all comes with the nonprofit case management out of the box. And that's where we as implementation partners can configure that to your needs based on the different needs of your organization. So much like Dio was talking about with his organization, where they have to track those authorizations, track a lot of different kinds of hours and be able to track billing. That's where you can see where you can take a base system like the nonprofit case management and then build on top of it to really match your specific needs of your organization.
thank you. Fantastic. All right, we've got a question here for Dio. You mentioned the importance of service data for your billing requirements. Can you speak to the, if any, financial benefit, ROI, or anticipated increase in reclaimed revenue if you're seeing as a result of your use of Salesforce? That's a great question, Dio. I can't wait to hear the answer.
Yeah, so I am projecting that we can have savings in terms of reclaimed revenue up to $500,000 a year because of our new streamline billing functions. And that's huge for the organization. It's definitely worth the investment. Depends on the year. Because what typically happens is that we get an inbound referral or an authorization. And then once we have the program start date, we can convert that into a program engagement. So the program engagement is active while we're delivering the services. And so what happens is that when we're done with the services that we can build, we basically changed that status for that program engagement from active to completed. So the minute that's done, it becomes to be billed, and it's marked as that, and it's in our dashboard. So it even saves a lot of the time for our financial person, our billing person, because it automatically is done as long as the staff are making sure that they change the active to complete. So there's no guessing game. There's no going back to hard copy files. It's all there. And the other thing too, if it's missing the documentation, which we need for billing, it also tracks that, right? And so basically, it used to be when we bill twice a month, that billing associate would go to everybody and go through a printed out Excel spreadsheet. Where's this? Where's that? So as a result of this, in addition to the reclaim revenue, we've actually been able to now sort of phase out that billing associate position because we don't need it anymore because it's all done by Salesforce. Now it's just part of a cyclical responsibility to an admin assistant's job because it basically is just paper processing. And the other thing too is that our funder gives us until the end of March the following year to reclaim any revenue from the previous year. And that used to be an arduous process from January to March. So I'm not only counting the actual revenue, I'm also counting the actual labor that this used to take. And so what we're planning to do is that by the end of December, 31st, the end of the year, there's no need to go through January, February, and March the following year to make sure that there's, if we left any sort of nickels in between the cushions, right? We already know where they are, and we can run reports that tells us, oh, this thing is missing a documentation that's why we didn't build. And also, as it relates to our financial person, we actually once it becomes to be billed, and then we build, and it becomes already billed, and then we also go through a process of already paid. So that used to be done manually by our financial person, and it's all done in Salesforce as a spreadsheet. You can download it, and then he incorporates it into his P&L, right? Because that's a major source of revenue. So that's also cuts the labor. And finally, we place a lot of people in jobs, but we have to follow up, 90 days, as Val mentioned, for retention. We get an additional money. So we basically get about a little bit over $1,000 for placing somebody in the job. And we only get that after we place somebody in a job. There are many people who never get a job. And so that's a lot of services that were never really fully realized in revenue. But it's very difficult if you have a high caseload, especially if we only have 1 or 2 job developers, to go back to find out, are you still in the job? That's, so the thing that that Val showed you in terms of 30, 60, 90 days, because we get another $1,000 for job retention, and we left all of that on the table because we were so busy in placing other people in jobs. And so that's where all of this upwards of $500,000 in saving based on labor, based on actual revenue, and based on revenue we never really historically collected because nobody was on top of it. So basically, Salesforce was just this, AI that just took care of everything for us and reminded us what we needed to do if we set up our database. So a lot of savings there, definitely worth the investment we made in creating this database.
Wow. Dio, that number, I mean, $500,000. I think we should rename this session how to find $500,000. That's incredible. I have a question for Val, a little bit more on the tech side of the house. Can you compare and contrast the use of our PMM, so program module management, and the service related objects and case management?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So there are 2 apps that Salesforce has right now that really tie to either program management or case management. With that program management app, the main objects that you get are tracking things like cases, tracking program engagements, tracking those service deliveries, as well as tracking those service schedules, which are what we consider classes. So out of the box with that PMM app, you're getting some really great functionality. Where the case management or NCCM or the nonprofit case management app comes into play is it really builds on top of that PMM app and provides you additional functionality. So where that additional functionality comes into play is tracking those robust intakes, being able to do case plans and assessments, and then also being able to do that on top of, and also tracking all of those client notes too. So really PMM is great if you're doing light touch, work where you're doing a lot more classes and not as much of the deeper case management. But if you're going to do the deeper case management where you're working on case plans and working on assessments, that's where you'd want to look at the nonprofit case management app, because it has all of that built out of the box and it's really slick functionality that Salesforce has built.
Excellent. Thank you, Val. Let's just see here. I have one question for Dio, and maybe Val can jump in here too. How has your development or fundraising team benefited at all as you got your programs onto Salesforce? Has your development or fundraising team benefited at all from getting your programs on Salesforce?
Yeah, so that's our phase 3, is to incorporate our fund development. Currently we use a Network for Good as our fund development software, and we want to develop a plugin for that. But that's in the future. Right now, it has helped though, because a lot of the times when our grant writer or our fund development director is writing a grant for services, right? Not capacity building, but for services, because they always want, 3 to 5 years of work in this area. What have you done? And that used to be, talking about it. So a lot of anecdotes of what we've done, which is not very competitive. And if they wanted a real hard data, again, we would go back to the files, we would go back to the Excel spreadsheet, we would get as much as we could from Microsoft Access, although that was just for billing. But now, as opposed to that, as opposed to that being a 2-week process and gathering all that information, it really is a 1-day process. And it's mostly because of pinpointing what is it you exactly want, because I don't want to give you all of our data, but you only want 20% of it, because we've done that as well. So, so if they knew exactly what they wanted and we get that program data, it's less than a day in getting that done. Maybe it's one morning and one afternoon. So right now it's even helping. So because of this arduous process, we wouldn't be able to submit as many grant proposals as we could. Whereas now, as long as we're eligible and it aligns to our mission, we submit everything and we cut and dice the data in a seamless way, at least comparatively speaking, from how we used to do it before. Before we probably would submit 5 to 7 grant proposals a year, and now it's like 5 to 7 grant proposals in 1 quarter. And a lot of that is based on program data that we need to put in the grant proposal.
Wow.
I think to build on to what Dio's talking about, myself being a former nonprofit person, I think when you use a system like Salesforce, one of the benefits is, like Dio is saying, having that one single source of truth, so that when you are running the grant reports, being able to pull that really quickly as well too. And one of the things I've seen that I've really loved in Salesforce is when we talked about those referrals coming in, or even referrals you're doing out, just all the program management you're doing can also lead to higher grants or higher asks too. So if you're referring someone out, like if Dio knows that somebody needs help with workforce development, but also might need to see a dentist. So as you're doing referrals out to for-profit companies and you're sending them good business, that's a great way too to track how those relationships are going. And at the end of the year, say, hey, we sent you 55 new dental clients. You should probably sponsor a table at our event.
And absolutely. I love that, Val.
Steph, I'd like to add to that as well, because I know this wasn't asked, but might be useful for a lot of the people out there. So as I imagine, a lot of nonprofits have board, right? And you work with your board, and we have a program committee in our board. What we actually did was that utilize the case plan for what it wasn't intended for, but we utilize it for board monitoring of our program. So when we run new programs, we use the case plan, like, we create a fake client, which is the new program that we're wanting. And so usually in the planning and launching a new program, there's a lot of action items and goals and objectives and all of that stuff. And we need to track, who's doing it and what the stage is. So we actually utilize case plan, not for client service, but for new program launching, of which we utilize that to report to the board, the program committee, in terms of what's the process of launching this new program. So it could be utilized, in creative ways, not just for client services. Just want to put that out there.
Dio, that's so innovative. I cannot wait to share that with other nonprofit organizations that I work with. That's such a great use for technology you already have, right? I would love, we are at time. We are so grateful for you, Dio, for sharing everything that you shared this morning. So grateful for the team over at Provisio. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope that we see you all in a few weeks at session 2 and session 3. You'll be getting an email with resource links from me and the team at Provisio and some of the other Salesforce.org team members. If you need anything at all, feel free to reach out. We are so grateful for the work that you do. And as corny as it sounds, your successes are our successes. And we are so excited to build your impact and your mission as you keep communities strong and vibrant. And so grateful again for joining us this morning. We look forward to working with you in the future. Have a super day, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.